Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Monty. If you can't see my lips, I'll wave my arms so you know that I'm the one speaking. I'm chairing the meeting this evening. I'm vice chair of the board. Bob Blue normally chairs our meetings if he was unavailable this evening. As a chair of the meeting tonight, I will not be voting on issues unless there is a tie. And I just thought everyone should know that. We do have some logistical things to review because this meeting is on Zoom as well. And I'd like to just hand it over to Connor. We're going to sort of run through logistically what's going on.
Yep. So thanks everybody for those virtually. I'm Connor McManus, Chief Marine Fisheries Division for DDM. Just wanted to walk through quickly the council procedures for tonight in the virtual context. So effectively, in this virtual environment, you should be able to listen and hear everything that we're walking through. This is a reminder for normal council meetings. We will work through discussions and the chair will take comments from the audience as he sees fit. And in the virtual realm, you can raise your hand, but we just wanted to clarify that the raising hand feature should be used when the chair is looking to solicit feedback from the public or the audience. So unlike a workshop setting where we will unmute someone on the spot, raising a hand may not necessarily solicit a response from the chair to unmute you immediately and start speaking. So it's at the discretion of the chair to field comments, but if and when that happens, you raise your hand, the chair will can look to that, and we will lower your hand and unmute you. We'll try and use the audio tools to ask questions and provide comments, as opposed to the comment box.
And just to make it clear, Nicole was sort of quarterbacking the hand raising. And great, fantastic. Set?
All set.
So that said, this is the Tuesday, October 12th Marine Fisheries Council meeting. Before I jump in the meeting, I guess it's been about 3 or 4 weeks. The fishing community in Rhode Island lost someone, Steve Medeiros, who was founding president of the Rhode Island Saltwater Anglers Association. In 23 years, he built the group from 10 members to 7,500 affiliated members. And he was actually, it's very appropriate to mention it tonight because he was a longtime member of this council. I think back then there were three-year terms, so we served on this council for 9 years. And I'd just like to have just a moment of silence in recognition of Steve Bassett. Well, thank you. I'd like to go to the agenda, and the first order of business is this evening's agenda, and it's pretty much in the packet, is the way that it appeared online in the e-packet. Have there been any changes? There was one item deleted, maybe item 9, second item under current regulations. Is that that item has been deleted? Part 14, summer flounder, is that correct?
Just the attachment was left in inadvertently. There's no agenda item over there. The attachment,
Okay.
we were going to talk about it. We're actually going forward rule change for the next cycle, so that's coming up next meeting.
Okay, great. And other than that, there have been no changes. So do we have a consent to approve this agenda? You see everyone nodding, so the agenda is approved. The next order of business is item number 2 on the agenda, which is the meeting minutes from the June 7th meeting. And if everyone has read those, we'll go reading those, and by consent, we'll approve those minutes. I see everyone nodding. No changes on those minutes, so the minutes are approved. This third item we have on at every meeting, it's time for public comment on any matters not on the agenda. And we won't necessarily discuss them tonight in detail, but we like to have an opportunity to have the public have the opportunity to bring things forward to the council. So, is there any public comment on any matter not on the agenda? I'll look at the audience, physical audience, as well as the Zoom audience. So I see no hands in the physical audience. Are there any hands in the Zoom audience?
Not that I see, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So we will move forward on that item. There's no one here to make a comment on that is not on the agenda. So I will move to item 4, which is the 2022 sector management plan. I'm going to turn it over to John to take us through that item.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yep, so you all have in your e-packet the 2022 sector management plan. It's an exercise we go through every year. Usually we do it for the IAC meeting, the Industry Advisory Committee. That committee did not meet this year due to lack of attendance. So you guys have it in front of yours, in front of you guys. Basically, it just outlines the heavy hitting species, their stock status, and recommendations from the division.
And I'd just like to remind the council, and perhaps the division staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no new news on this for the council. We've seen all those issues. We are merely informing the General Assembly as we do each year. Is that correct, John?
That's correct. I would add it is helpful in making decisions on adjusting ratios of license exit entry.
We do want to take a vote on this to move the plan forward. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the plan forward to the General Assembly. So moved by Mike. Second by, I see Jason down the end. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. So approved. The next item on the agenda is the proposed regulation amendment. And John, this is your show as well.
Yeah, sure. So what you have in front of you, each year at this meeting, we discuss license exit entry ratios. At our May workshop, we looked for proposals, and we did get, so first off, we did not get any proposals to change the COHOG commercial exit entry ratio or the soft shell clam commercial exit entry ratio or anything about whelk licensing management. So you do not see those this evening. They will remain status quo. But we did have 2 proposals at our May workshop concerning the restricted finfish endorsement on the principal effort license. So you have 3 options before you. Option 1 is status quo. That's where we are right now. Right now, if 1 license leaves, 1 can enter. Right now, according to what has retired over the past year, that would result in 12 new restricted finfish endorsements being available in 2022. At the workshop, we had an industry proposal for a 1-to-0 ratio, meaning that there would be no new licenses issued in 2022. Any that exited would not be replaced. This would result in 0 new licenses being issued for restricted finfish in 2022. And then at the workshop again, we had an industry proposal to up the ratio from 1 to 2, meaning for every license not renewed, 2 new licenses would enter. And if we went down this course, it would be the result would be 24 new licenses for restricted finfish being issued in 2022.
Thank you, John. The format, just to refresh the audience as well as the council on the process that we're using on all of these, is the same that we've used right along. We'll hear from a division staff person, and then we'll go to the chief of marine fisheries, Connor, to get the division's point of view in what's before us, and then we'll go to the council for questions, and then to the audience. So Connor, does the division have a preference here?
So I would say that the division doesn't have an overly strong preference on the options. I think you'll see from your e-packet that the public comment highlights a broad spectrum for all 3 of these options here. I would just like to, I guess, maybe as a cautionary note that there are other active programs going on, such as the pilot aggregate program, and without knowing the fate of what that program will look like for 2022, it's unclear how the issuance of new licenses would be for that program or the fishery next year. So, traditionally, there's been many instances where one-to-one has been sought by the council, but ultimately there's no strong preference here, but just as a caution for the other programs we have going on that may intersect with this vote.
Does the council have questions for Connor, the division?
Connor, if you could, just in particularly based on what you just told us about implications of other programs, I'm very curious about option 3, where we would essentially double the ratio. Would the limitations you're talking about have a bigger effect if we added more licenses? Can you explain that to me?
Sure. So just perhaps as background for folks, we are coming up on the end of year 3 of our pilot aggregate program that allows people currently in the program as part of the pilot to land a daily limit some over a week for both summer flounder and black sea bass. So the thought here is that, so I'll say that come the early next year is when, before the council, it will be up to decide what the state of that program is and in what capacity it should be adopted into regulation. Anything from nothing or to something available to all, and kind of walking through the pros and cons of doing so based on some of leading on some of what we've learned the last few years. So I guess the notion is that, for example, if that program were to avail itself next year based on recommendations and such, with the issuance of additional licenses, it's unclear how more licensed harvesters would be impacting the quota in certain years. So there are many other attributes that play into that in terms of total quota changes annually for bluefin black sea bass and other species, of course, but that's somewhat of the logic there. Just not knowing what increased efforts would do if that program were to occur.
Does council have any comments, if not questions, or is the council here to go to the public for any additional information? Yes?
Sure, why not?
So are there any comments or questions that that the public physically here in the room have? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Your
For the
name
record, my name is James Boyd. I'm a principal effort license holder in the state for Rhode. And I would ask the council to consider option 1, which is status quo, a 1-to-1 exit to entry ratio, or option 3, but I would encourage the council not to consider option 2, which would not allow for any new entrants at all. I submitted written comments dated September the 9th that explain my reasoning for that, but in particular, if the council were to select option 2 and not allow any new entrants, you're going to unnecessarily restrict options for commercial fishermen to have other fisheries to prosecute in order to make a viable living as licensed commercial fishing.
Thank you. Do you have any other comments in the audience? Do we have any hands raised on the Zoom?
Not seeing any hands, Mr. Chair.
So that said, we've received all the comments. One more time back to the council. Does the council have any questions? If not, we'll entertain motion on this issue, on the 3 options. Do we have a motion? Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that council recommend option 3 comes from my personal opinion that we need to be more inclusive to try to build this industry. That's why I would recommend that we consider approving that.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Katie. Time for discussion. Let the council,
I'm not sure how the DEM looks at latent use or, people that aren't actively fishing. And I think that definitely needs to be brought into consideration, I still laugh because some of the folks on here, but they might be online. I'm one of the young guys in the fishery. I just turned 54. So yeah, we need some young blood in the business before. Nobody wants to get into business.
Yeah.
And anybody that can stick it out, anybody can stick it out in this industry, God bless them, because it's not an easy road. But yeah, I think that's a better option.
Thanks, Jason. Any other comments from the board? So I'd like to call the motion. The motion was to recommend to the director adopting 1-2, which is the exit entry ratio for the restricted finfish. The motion was made by Chris and seconded by Katie. All those in favor say aye. Aye. So it's unanimous. The second item is the general equipment provisions. And John, will you be reviewing that as well?
Yes. So what you see before you is some proposed gear regulations, and this is basically giving guidance what the department should do when floating fish trap lease sites have been retired and turned back to the department. Fish trap sites, once they're retired, given back to us, we need to make them available to the public by a date that is February 1st. We are proposing in these regulations application period between February 1st to March 1st when these are available. And we also outline a priority system for cases where we might have more than one application for any given sites. Right now, this is it's a finfish fishery, so it does catch the restricted finfish. So we also propose that anyone who would be in this process must have a restricted finfish endorsement or a multi-purpose license.
Thank you, John. Connor, does the division?
Oh, I got one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bit of info for you guys. So just a brief summary of what we're proposing here is as far as priority goes. So as you can imagine, some of these sites might be more popular than others. So if they do retire, you might have more than one company being interested in them. So we wanted to have a way to at least form a reasonable queue for these things. We took our guidance from our current licensing system, where, for example, principal effort licenses with finfish will go through a prioritization process we've already established. We are trying to mirror this here as much as we can for the fish trap sites. So the first category would state that anyone who is interested in these sites, if they are a current fish trap site holder or a resident crew member who have actively participated in the floating fish trap fishery, they would be in that first category for being able to lease these retired fish trap sites. And then if it came to it, we would have a second priority category of any Rhode Island resident with a multi-purpose or restricted finfish license. So if any category, there are more eligible applicants than there are sites available for issues, those permits would be issued via a separate lottery. And this does sometimes happen with our licensing system, where we have people that meet the prioritization criteria, and there's more than the number of licenses, so we actually have a blind lottery that we administer. So those are our.
Thanks, John. Sorry, I jumped in there. Connor, does the division have any point of view here?
Sure. So this came before us as we were trying to figure out, in instance, how to circulate a certain location back into the fishery, into the process to do that. So it pushed us to build a system that allows for doing so. One of our goals here is to try and ensure that as traps go back open, that those with the experience that know how to use them, because it's a very niche fishery, it's very challenging, it takes a lot of expertise to get into, that this first priority category is intended to try and help ensure that the sites get actively used and that those who are using them successfully do so. And the second priority category, again, is to just help to delineate that. So it's trying to make a blend of both ensuring that the sites are getting used, but then also making sure that there is opportunity for new entrants into this fishery. We did bring this to workshop and got limited feedback on it without any real strong feedback from people through the workshop.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions for the division? Does the council seek additional input from members of the audience, public? No additional information? That said, we'll entertain a motion on the floating fish trap regulation amendments. Is there a motion from the council to accept, amend, or?
Chairman, may I ask if we can get back to the first part of this slide?
Sure. That big, Chris?
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the director that the floating fish trap regulation be implemented as proposed.
Second by Andy. So is there a discussion on the motion, which is to recommend to the director to adopt traffic regulations as proposed? Is there any discussion on the council? No discussion. We'll call the motion. All those in favor of accepting the recommended amendments to the floating fish trap regulations, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, council. The next item is item number 6, which is the Shellfish Advisory Panel Meeting. And Katie, if you don't mind, after you just highlight a few things, we're going to move to approve those minutes by consent. And I'd just like to point out that from what I understand, the meat of those minutes are items number 7 and 8. So there's probably no need for you to go into detail on those because we'll have discussions on those ones. So Katie?
The Shellfish Advisory Panel met last Wednesday. We didn't have any aquaculture to discuss, just the winter harvest schedules for Granite Bay, there's a little Fox Island and Crystal Harbor were voted on. Providence River 2021 was discussed and motions made, which we will discuss it. And then we had a short discussion on Otter Pond and an update on that, and a brief update on the Narragansett Bay Sam ground.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Katie on that report? Because as I say, we will be getting into detail with 2 of those key issues in items 7 and 8. With no questions, do we approve those minutes by consent? And we'll look around and put nod of heads. So approved, so the minutes are approved. The next item is the shellfish harvest schedule. To remind the council, this is something that happens every year. It's basically the winter schedule, correct? Harvesting in these areas. And who will be taking this issue on the divisions? I mean,
I believe Anna Kerber-Williams from the division is here virtually, so she'll walk through the slides
okay.
on the different areas, and review some of the staff.
And we'll do that, James.
And then, and come back to me then.
Okay, great.
Hi, everyone. This is Anna Gerber-Williams. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Great, thank you. So during the SAP meeting last week, we discussed the winter harvest schedules for the shellfish management areas. So we started with Greenwich Bay sub area 1, which you can see labeled on the map shown above, also called tagging area 8A. I just want to be clear that sub area 1 here is combination of sub area 1 and sub area 2. This area was combined this past spring into one area. The default schedule was presented to the panel, which you can see above on the slide, which would be open from 8 a.m. to 12 on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, beginning the second Wednesday of December and continuing through the last Friday in April. And it would exclude December 25th and January 1st. The schedule is allowed 48 hours of shellfishing during the month of December. Next slide, please. So the SAP proposed this following schedule here, which would be an opening from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on these specific days in December, the 8th, 10th, 13th, 15th, 17th, 20th, 22nd, 23rd, 27th, 29th, and 30th. They also stated that if any days prior to December 21st are closed due to water quality, that December 21st and 28th will be open to harvest. And that after December 2021, the default schedule would take effect. Are there any questions about this?
Does the council have any questions?
Those dates, because they're actually different.
Katie is checking the dates in her notes to see if they match.
They're different from what we have on the minutes. Yeah, so it's instead of the, so what you have here is to put the Thursdays in as the dates. Remember that was switched at the SAP. So if you want to change the 21st and the 28th, with the 23rd and the 30th, that will be more accurate to what the SAP is. The Tuesdays would be open, and then if there's any schedule, any rain closure dates, then the Thursdays will, the last 2 weeks in December will be open.
Yes, that is correct. Katie is correct. So the dates would be December 8th, 10th, 13th, 15th, 17th, 20th, 22nd, 23rd, 27th, 29th, and 30th.
The 23rd is there twice. 30th is, those are fishing days anyway, so I don't understand.
So the way we did this is the last 2 weeks in December, because the eves of Christmas and New Year's fall on Friday, they allow for an extra day throughout the week. So the discussion was, is it better to have the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday schedule, or Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then change Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? That's the difference here. And then if there's any closure, they'll allow for the Thursday of those 2 weeks to be open. Potentially 4 days on the last 2 weeks of December.
But as Dave said, excuse me, sorry. As Dave said, the 23rd and 30th are already listed before the substitution for days according to the law.
So those should be taken out.
Taken out or changed to another date?
Those should be taken out. Oh, that now I'm getting confused. So in.
Yes, here, let me list the dates again. And so the dates would be December 8th, 10th, 13th, 15th, 17th, 20th, 22nd, 23rd, 27th, 29th, and 30th. And then if any days are closed due to water quality, the 21st and 28th would be open.
You said those are Thursdays?
Yeah, can you double check that? Because I have different dates. So I'm so sorry. But I have different dates here.
The 23rd and the 30th are Thursdays, that's right.
Those should not be in the top. Fire prevention.
Okay, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
It's, of the last 2 weeks, yes. So I'll read what I have and I double check for you. So it's, you ready? 8, 10, 13, 15, 17, 20, 21, 22, 27, 28, and 29. And then the days due to water quality impairment would be the 23rd and the 30th. Just double check on the screen.
I think that below, the other date would be 23rd and 30th. All right, Dave?
Yes.
Yeah.
So does everyone feel good about those dates? Connors, does the division have a point of view? Did we already get your point of view on this?
No, but I guess, Mr. I just been asked, would you like to vote on individual areas, or would you like to vote on all three winter harvest management areas at once? I'll leave that up to the council.
I'm good voting on them all together. Katie's not even a yes, the council, I'm seeing a lot of.
So perhaps we'll go through the next two and then.
Okay.
So next we discussed the shellfish management area within Bissell Cove and Fox Islands, which here on the map is labeled as tagging area 7D. The current default schedule is similar to Greenwich Bay, where it is open 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, starting the second Wednesday of December and continuing through the end of April, including December 25th and January 1st annually. Next slide, please. You can go then. Oh, thanks. So the SAP decided to adopt a very similar schedule to Greenwich Bay, where they proposed to open 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on December 8th, 10th, 13th, 15th, 17th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th. They would not have any additional days if any closures occurred due to water quality. And the motion passed unanimously. So I guess if there's any questions.
Joe? Yes. Katie, just for the layman here, could you just, why the difference, just make it a simple answer?
Oh, because Bissell Cove does not close due to rain.
licenses limited, right?
Right, we're restricted to the amount of days, hours, right? Right?
Any further questions? Any questions? We should move on. Last one.
All right, and the final shellfish management area that was discussed was Bristol Harbor. The current default schedule for the area is open from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, starting on January 2nd and continuing through January 31st, and then open daily starting February 1st and going through the end of April. It is closed the start of May through the first of the year. Next slide, please. So the SAP discussed and decided to keep go with the default schedule for the area. There was no vote made since they decided to just allow the default schedule to take effect.
Thank you. Any questions on that one? With that said, Connor, you give a comment on these?
Sure, just that the division has no opposition to the motion by the SAP. The Greenwich Bay management style, in that type of triggering other days, we did that last year, it worked out well. We're able to coordinate with enforcement, keep the rest of the state is changing. So in terms of logistics, it shouldn't be an issue. They are within the hourly bounds for regulation, so we don't have to.
So, and this is pretty much what the Shellfish Advisory Committee wanted on all of these three. The division has no objection to these. Does the council have any questions? Does the council care to seek any additional public comment on these? You do? Sure. So we've had a request. Yes.
James Boyd again, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As a PEL license holder, I just want to support the SAP recommendation to the Green Fisheries Council for the management area openings for the lake.
Thank you. Any other comments here in the room? Any Zoom questions? No Zoom questions. Dr. Rice, I see you trying to raise your hand there.
Okay, yeah. So on this one, on all of these areas, I just want to sort of point out that there are essentially pollution closure areas in close proximity to these sites that are in effect working as de facto sort of marine protected areas, if you will, in terms of these laws. So these are, we have fairly sort of robust populations, if you will, behind those pollution closure lines. So I just want to sort of point that out because I meant to set that up for comments for next.
Okay. So I think we've vetted this. There's no additional comments from the public, so we'll entertain a motion. Jason? Oh, Jason. Travis.
Motion to make a recommendation to the director, with the recommendations from the staff as well as the form for adoption.
Is there a second? Second, Jason on the end. So any discussion? So all those in favor, raise your hand, please. It's unanimous, so approved. So we'll move on to item number 8, which is the Providence River Shellfish Management Area. And who will be commenting on this one?
Anna will give you an update on that, and then we'll come back.
Okay, Honor, if you don't mind giving us an update on item 8.
Yeah, so we had a discussion during the SAP meeting regarding the Providence River and a potential winter opening. The SAP came forward with a proposal to open the Providence River 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on December 13th, 20th, and 27th. And if the area is closed due to water quality impairments, the area shall open from 8 a.m. through 11 a.m. on the first available weekday following the respective Monday open date, so long as water quality allows. And this was voted upon and approved.
Thank you. Does the division have a point of view on this one?
Sure. So as background, this area is new to open in 2021. Opening, I believe, May 26th. If you recall, when we set forward with regulations, much of which was adopted by the council with the discrepancy of if you remember, the 2.1 to roughly over 2 million cohort kind of quota buffer that we were discussing for triggering a closure. That was not adopted, so the area moved forward. I believe 12 or 13 of the days that possible harvest were open. 12 to 13 days were harvestable based on water quality out of the 27 or so that were in regulation, so you can get a sense of the amount of rain that was there. Even with those number of days, I believe the total harvest through those days was just shy of 4 million cohogs for the year.
So that's nearly twice as many as
from the original recommendations, albeit, there were fewer days. So generally speaking, from our perspective, we would prefer to let some of the other science and data come in from fisheries independent surveys like our dredge survey and do a recalculation from the model as to what the area can support before allowing more harvest this year. Effectively, the challenge has been trying to anticipate the harvest rates and pressure for this area, something that we're still learning. And based on what we've learned this year with participation, harvest rates, we can give a better and more precise estimate for what we would recommend for next year. Not to say that it's 2 million or 4 million or whatnot, but we would be able to come back with more sound estimates before reopening the area in December. It is worth noting, though, that presumably in the winter, it's a smaller fishery that operates up there. And theoretically, when we model, whether prolonged harvest this year or next year, it would impact the MSY in both cases. So I guess if the council were to, recommend the SAP's motion or recommendation, then harvest from this year would be impacting potential harvest opportunities next year based on the population dynamics in the model. So our formal recommendation would be to hold on opening in December, and then we are supportive of December harvest and trying to make this area available for the fishery in the winter when prices are better than other times of the year. But we would prefer accounting for that in the schedule at the beginning of the year. And now that we have better information to inform that, what the harvest is like for the area, that would be something we'd be willing to discuss for 2022, absolutely.
Okay, that said, we'll go to the council for questions. I know, Dr. Rice, you had a comment. I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I have some comments on this one. I had sent email and some literature to the division on this. Is that this is an interesting case in terms of sort of a opening fisheries. And I went to the SAP meeting. This body had kind of selected me as the scientific advisor, and I kind of sort of sat down and kind of listened to everything going on. I was truly amazed, actually, at how quickly and how much product is being removed from the Providence River. And certainly, the division is going through very sort of excellent state-of-the-art sort of fisheries management models based on maximum sustainable yield. The sort of the issue that I would like the department to consider is that when using the MSY models, one of the side effects is that we're essentially riding sort of the edge of growth overfishing on our stock. One of the major functions of those bivalves that are up there is basically the filtration capacity of that whole water. I've done some basic calculations back at the envelope from time to time on this. Is that the quahogs up there will process about 20% of the entire volume up there on a single tide cycle, which is a lot of water being moved. So if we're kind of sort of reducing the numbers of the standing crop up there, we sort of may be sort of affecting the water filtration capacity of the lake. So my suggestion on this is that sort of going into the future in these newly open areas is that the division sort of in addition to sort of the MSY models, sort of take a look at something like sort of the EcoPath model or some of the other ecological models to kind of take sort of a quantification or at least a look at the ecological function, because really what we don't want to do over the long term is kind of move this baseline so that we're kind of like ramping it down over time and basically getting to some sort of situation. We know that this has happened historically with, say, the oyster fishery in Narragansett Bay. So at the turn of the 20th century, there was oysters all over the place. Now they're not. Ecologically, they were sort of replaced by the quahogs. And we kind of don't want to go into the next stage of whatever the next sort of ecological replacement for quahogs is going to be. It might be sort of jellyfish or something like that. I just want to bring this to the attention of the council in terms of the thinking and put it on the radar screen of the division and the fine scientists within the division.
So just so it's clear to me, it's more of a ecosystem-based management approach than a single species approach.
Exactly correct.
Any further comments?
I have a question for Professor Rice. So, thank you for that explanation and discussion. So, based on what you said, I'm assuming you would recommend not opening in December, which would be.
Would be taking a look at a harvest rate that would be well below MSY.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I assume moving forward for next year, you would like to consider.
Yes, But what I'm basically recommending is some level.
Yep.
That would be below sort of classic MSY, but based on sort of the ecosystem approach principles that are fit in there. And I see this as kind of like almost part of the mission of DEM in general, sort of, we're not only managing the fishery, but we're managing the ecology of a well-managed estuary as well. Thanks.
And the concern is not just with this area, but sort of building a workable model for other areas we may open as well.
Right, and so that's why I mentioned those de facto marine protected areas adjacent to Greenwich Cove. I mean, I'm kind of sort of feeling over time that that's the reason why Greenwich Cove is a quote crunching machine, is because of those effectively marine protected areas, right?
There you go.
I have a couple questions about that. I guess, so what I'm hearing anecdotally is that the area north of the line of Providence River is now setting up a really big set of docks. And that is maybe because the water is getting cleaner because of the new systems up there. How would they have to take that into account, or are you just considering that that's an area of conservation and that's what?
Yeah, the problem, the problem is we've got kind of two issues going. One is sort of the rapid recruitment of pellets, all of this. What I'm basically saying is that some of these larger adult populations, their value is more in the filtration rate capacity. So it might take, maybe half a dozen of the little ones to have the same water filtration capacity as one big jelly. So that's kind of the issue. So we've got kind of like a recruitment issue that's kind of a more sort of MSY type thing. But we also have sort of ecosystem integrity issues as well. On the other hand, these have to be balanced.
And would you take the size, composition of the funnels into consideration of this? Because
Yes.
I don't know if you have if you saw, I know you were at the meeting, but did you see what was being harvested and it was all the small?
There was a smaller one, yeah. And that was the good part.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the good part.
So wouldn't it be more beneficial right now to thin out the small ones and not to allow the larger ones to grow and not get crowded out?
Probably. Yeah. So those are the ones we want to
So maybe
more target. Yeah.
I know they're just going to keep growing, so why don't we have an opening in December to be able to take out some of that small stuff and allow the bigger stuff to.
Right.
So,
I would say, yeah. I mean, if we somehow are protecting the larger ones, that would be from the way we would see this in terms of the filtration capacity. That would probably be the best thing.
so with all due respect, the December opening would be.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion.
We just want to make sure that, are there any other questions or comments before we do the motion?
I have a question.
Just 1 second, I'm sorry. So does the council have any further questions for the division? So the council has no further questions for the division. We will seek public input and comment. Everyone is nodding their head. Yes, sir. Your name, please.
My name's Kyle Farah. I'm a 34-year-old commercial shellfishman. I've been doing it for about 10 years. And now with this area, I had a lot of questions. But my main one is, do we have any scientific evidence that fish in this area now isn't going to negatively impact shellfish stocks in A section in the future, say 10 years from now, or however, if taking all this product out of there is going to somehow negatively affect the stocks in A section? Do we have any proof that it's not going to do that?
That'd be a question for Connor. Do you get it?
I'll take it on. So over harvesting is certainly a concern for this area, not just in sustaining itself, but from supplying larvae down bay.
Yes.
So it's certainly a component. We try to address for that in our work by effectively having the areas linked to each other in terms of sharing recruitment. So based on some previous research that the division has done, trying to understand where larvae go, where they land, so trying to account for those intricacies. But to answer your question, we don't know if we're going to be now overfished by technical definition until we run the model for this upcoming year. It's the first year we've harvested. So
now, what I was concerned about is, wouldn't, like, the safest thing to do would be to turn it into like a management area similar to like Jenny's Creek, Providence Island, where its sole purpose would be to seed A section and B section and below it, because if we do overfish it and it does negatively impact those areas, I'm 34, I could be doing this for another 20, 30 years. Because if it negatively impacts it, this is gonna affect me big time. I'm gonna pay a price for it down the road. So what I was thinking was it would be the best thing to do with those northern rivers is to make those like, instead of, to make those like a closed, like a management area similar to Jenny's Creek, where, yeah, it's clean water, but it's there to seed the lower bay and, well, 8th section in the lower bay. Because we don't, like you said, we don't have definite answers as to where this seed comes from. Until we do, that time does come where we can say, all right, yeah, you know, it's not seeding it, then okay, let's open it up. But until we have definite proof of where the seed's coming from, I think the safest thing to protect the future of the industry would be to keep it closed and keep it a management area used just for seeding purposes, the same way that Jenny's Creek is over on Providence Island.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments from the physical audience? Yes, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, James Boyd again. I agree with my fellow shell fishermen that the area above Connecticut, the line from Connecticut Light to Nyack Light in Barrington, is in fact a seed source for the lower bay. However, it's been a seed source for 75 years. We have not fished up above Connecticut Light. And so if we were going to see the beneficial results of that, we would be seeing that for the last 10 or more years in area A, B, and even the lower bay. I remember back in the 80s, working in the lower bay, you could make a living below Warwick Light. You cannot make a living shellfishing today in the area below Warwick Light. It is impossible. There's been no steps there. I remember days working in front of the high banks and catching 300 pounds of necks. You could not do that in all of the lower bay combined effort. Catch 300 pounds of necks. Just impossible. Area B, it is extremely difficult to make a decent day's wage in Area B now. And Area A is where most of the effort is happening now. What we need to do is spread our effort outside of areas A and B. We certainly can't do it in the lower bay. The upper Providence River is the future of this shell fisherman. I'm on limited time in terms of my years of shell fishing because I'm in my 60s. So we need to manage the upper Providence River carefully. But what I would say is that in doing that management, we also need to responsibly harvest out of there to allow for better recruitment there. And as Council Member Egan mentioned, there is some evidence that even above Area 1E, above Gaspee Point, is a tremendous resource up there. That too may be open at some point in the future when Phase 3 of the Combined Sewer Overflow Project, the tunnel from Pawtucket to East Providence, is completed. We won't see the benefits of that for at least 5 or 6 years. However, that may improve water quality such that we can fish above Gaspee Point at some point in the future to benefit my fellow fishermen here when probably another 10 or 15 years older than them. So what I will say is that there's a tremendous resource up in the river. We need to manage it responsibly, and I am in support of the Shellfish Advisory Panel's recommendation for a very limited opening in December. We're only talking 3 days, and that we're not going to see the level of harvest on a daily basis that we saw this summer. There'll be far fewer boats up
Thank you, Jim.
there. Thank you.
Can I respond to that?
Just 1 second, sir. We just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity. Anyone else in the room have a question? Then we'll go to the online. Do we have any hands raised online?
No hands.
Okay.
I totally disagree with that. I make a living in B section in the Lower Bay, every day. Well, when A section's not open, but I was in B section today, I did very well. But I just think that if we do move up there without having scientific proof of where the seed comes from, before you guys reopen it again, I think you should give us ample time, guys like me, where if we want to get out of the fishery and move on to a different career and not take part in that, you give us plenty of time. Like, give us open it, if you want to open it in the wintertime, open it next winter so I can go and I can find a job. Because I completely disagree. I'm seeing a lot of life in B section and in the Lower Bay. I just found a spot over the summertime that hasn't been worked since the 80s. Everyone says, oh, there's nothing there, you can't make a living in there. I went in there, I do very well. I do 1,500, 1,600 pounds. So, I mean, I hear that from a lot of guys. Maybe it's just me. I don't know, maybe it's because I don't know. Maybe I'm just lucky, I guess. But I'm doing very well in the Lower Bay and in B section. So I stand by what I said, that I think the safest thing to do with this area would be to keep it closed until we have more proof as to where the seed's coming from, to not wipe it out and have it negatively affect the bay beneath it. And if we are gonna open it, and I think you should give us, because now it's a serious thing. Before, we kept saying we're gonna open the Providence River and then push it back and it never gets open. So I never thought it was actually gonna really open up until I saw it until now. But I think if we're gonna reopen it again, we should open it at a later enough time where if I wanna get a job and get out of the business and not take part in it, because it's not a risk that I'm willing to take 20, 25 years from now, where if it does negatively affect it, now I gotta go look for a job. I'd rather do that now.
Thank you so much for your comment. Back to the council for further questions or comments or motions.
Actually, I just wanted to go more when what Jim said is true. There will be way less people fishing up there in December if it even opens. The rains that 10 years, it rains a lot. So if we see 1 or 2 days, it would be very awesome. Otherwise, I don't know how much rain do we normally get in December? Do you have data?
Not off the top of my head, but it's a big, it impacts Greenwich every year.
Right.
So, and Providence has a lower threshold, one of the more conservative.
I think we got 5 days of Greenwich last year, and I don't know. Half inch for Providence River, so it would be the likelihood of it opening plus the reduced pressure from fisheries is something to consider.
Any other comments from council? Yes.
It just, I was digging, sustenance digging since I was a kid, but I mean, my old man, some of his comments stuck in my head forever, and that is that digging plants and cohorts is very similar to farming. And when you have a biomass that is enormous, it's very difficult for recruitment. It's like a haddock fishery. We had a haddock fishery exploded, and then next, all the haddock were 14 to 18 inches. The biomass was enormous, but they were all tiny. I know with shellfish, if they're crowded, they don't grow, they die off. It doesn't hurt to till the soil. I think you have to keep an eye on it for sure, but I think this opening in December is going to not do anything but give you more information. And I think the other part is Chowder clams don't bring a lot of money. A lot of guys just dump right back, so you're literally just moving the mamas and papas around to spread the babies, so, I think it's a good thing. It's 3 days in December, I'm sorry, but you got the balls to go digging up there in December, go for it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? We'll entertain any motions from the council. Any questions? Question in the back there? Yes.
Yes, my name's Yasmin.
Did you say your name again? I'm sorry.
Yes, Yasmin.
Okay.
My query, from what I've been hearing from the concerns, is there's not a lot of assessment on the areas, the site areas that the commercial shellfishers are concerned at. Could it be possible that during the close times to possibly do a stock assessment of the population, so at least we would get some data for those site areas?
Thanks for your question. So yes, so annually now we've been running a stock assessment for the Narragansett Bay region that models 3 different sub areas that effectively share recruitment amongst themselves. The river being one. I guess more direct to your question. One of the tools we use, or that's input into that model, is data on the actual abundance number per square meter, which is taken using a dredge survey. That survey we've had some vessel issues in the recent years, but that survey will take place next month, with the river being one of the areas of which would go into our estimate of the population when we rerun the model early next year with final numbers of landings, size composition of the landings, and the survey data.
Okay, I see. Thank you for the information.
Thanks for your question. Any other comments, or we'll entertain motions from the council on this issue? Yes.
Motion to accept the recommendations of the staff.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Katie. Is there a discussion on the council's part? Seeing no hands for discussion, all those, we're gonna read the motion. The motion is to recommend to the director the adoption of the winter harvest schedule for the Providence River as proposed by the staff. Motion made by Mr. Chavez. Stephen seconded that. All those in favor of this motion, raise your right hand. It is unanimous. Thank you, council. So we will move on to the information items on the agenda. We have item number 9. The first one is the cooperative multi-state possession and landing pilot program for summer flounder and black sea bass. And John, you got to highlight a little bit on that?
Yeah, really quick, just informational that it is going to be going on. We removed the sunset clause, and usually we would talk about it at this meeting, but it is, it's right now in writing, it's gonna go on in perpetuity.
Thank you. Another informational item, the commercial licensing legislation. Connor, do you have comments on that?
Yeah, just really briefly, that the legislation was passed, so in terms of imminent things, for most folks, for commercial licensing, it won't really have an impact until, I believe, 2023, but there are certain elements that we will have to review for regulation, of which we would bring before the council workshop notice, as it normally would. So, and just wanted to notify the council that the legislation did pass, as during COVID, it's not always easy to keep track of these things, keep you abreast of those changes. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. The next item on the information agenda, item number 9, is council legislation, and I know that Bob had mentioned that what stimulated this discussion was the status of the IAC. And Chris, do you have a comment on that at all? And I know that we were going to, and that sort of opened it up, is how effective the the IAC, correct? Yeah. It's how it is functioning, the difficulty, and the reality of getting people to attend meetings, et cetera. But it sort of opened up Pandora's box in the sense that the council may have other areas that need improvement from a legislation perspective. Chris, do you care to comment?
I think my observation is that I think I'm on my second term now, and I've been to a lot of the ICC meetings. The way that I saw them is we did have to, especially the last couple of years and this year, as John said, we didn't have a meeting, really had to get out and stir the pot to get people to attend. And then often there wasn't a lot of productive conversation during the meeting. I think the last time this is my personal opinion, it was more of a gripe session than a productive meeting that, led to something good for the council to recommend to the director. So that, I've seen it become a little, perhaps less effective than maybe it was 10 or so years ago before I was a councilman. I think one of the interesting things is that, we might better use the effort of the fishermen and the people coming to meetings and get better feedback and input to the department if we as a council were able to recommend, if we would, special panels or advisory groups to take up specific missions on kind of issues of the day or issues that might be affecting the future of fishermen. So I feel like, I guess because the IAC is kind of a legislative requirement, it doesn't seem to be that it's a requirement that doesn't seem to really be able to meet a need. It's not filling a need, right? Thank you, Dave. So, I guess the discussion would be, could we recommend, taking that out of the regulation and maybe replacing it with a proviso that the council can appoint committees or advisory panels on any matter that seems to be important to advancing the fishery.
More like on an ad hoc.
Yeah.
Do you have perspective on this item? It's a little bit broader, but it's one meeting where there are other issues that may be addressed, that maybe you should take more of a holistic approach, look at a number of things.
Well, I guess I was just going to say, similar to what Chris has pointed out, that, I think the question has been with the IC in particular, what kind of reviewing what its value is, and if the council still deemed it valuable, what would we need to do to make it more helpful for people, for fisheries management and around moving forward. So I guess the first discussion point was, what's the future of the IAC? And how is it best, what are your thoughts on that, in terms of its existence and its makeup or format? But, with that, I may be speaking out of place a bit, but, Bob, I believe Chris as well, we're beginning to also think about, what are the different parts in statute that intersect with the council? What aspects of that are imperative, obsolete, or need rectifying to improve the council's role or to better align it with what its actual function is? And I'll look at Chris to either confirm or deny. But basically, ultimately, we were thinking about trying to collate or gather the instances in statute where the council is listed to give you all an understanding of not just the general role of the council, but the different aspects that are linked to it in statute. And if we were going to, for example, look at something like the IAC and remove that from statute, it would be an opportunity to look at other elements as well, try to be efficient, and address, multiple, quote unquote, issues if such exist. So,
You know, we certainly go to the council for comments and questions, but I have a question. What, how would we go about doing this? Would we establish a committee, a division, just come up with recommendations and put them through the council to explore? I'm asking because I don't know.
yeah, so I mean, in terms of, I guess there's two components, right? So there are items that maybe the division supports to be looked at or rectified, then ideally that aligns well with what the council would advise to. And we wouldn't move on anything without council comments and ideally support. At that point, we would bring it through legislation within DEM to the state levels. So, we would worry about that legwork, but it would, I think ultimately at a minimum, there'd be some level of endorsement from the council that these changes are supported.
When we go to the division to come up with, you said their stature intersects with the council, what's obsolete. The division would do that work and bring it to the council for their.
That's right, we would we either have or are building a document that just highlights for folks where in statute you all are listed and then what the language is that's linked to it, for then your review.
Thank you. Comments from the council on all of this?
Yes, well, I just, to follow up, and I did talk with Bob about this a bit. You know, again, this is my personal opinion. I've really enjoyed serving on this council, and I think all of us have, and we enjoy the fact that we get to interact with a very important part of the state's commerce, and we try to protect it and advance it. But when we get appointed to the council, you know, it takes a little while to learn what's going on, right? And to understand why we're addressing certain things in regulation. And you know, there's not a training course that says, okay, here are the 12 things in statute that put you guys in these seats. People in these seats, but so I do feel like as well as this body functions, and I've seen some really great things get discussed at this table over the last 7 or 8 years, we could probably do better if we had a better understanding of why we're here and what are the various important missions that we can take care of. I mean, you know, nobody wants to do something that somebody else has got figured out, right? We will have purpose to advance the mission of making good recommendations to the director. So I like this idea of, you know, the division of fisheries looking into the statute and seeing what parts of it are really not helpful for us to take on, right? And really focus on things that are important. So,
Right. Any other comments? So moving forward, I guess you have to say, I see a lot of heads nodding that folks think that this is a good idea to explore this, correct? Great.
So, just to round out, Mr. Chair, ideally what we'll do is before the next meeting, perhaps either in your e-packet or separately, we'll give you a document that reference with the statute references and the actual language, so you get a sense of what that looks like. And again, our goal is to it's not to try and change authority, it's just the council is trying to streamline efforts and make sure what we're doing in the division is of value to you all. And then, again, if there are things that can be addressed, then we will.
Great. Thank you, Connor. Very good. So moving on, we've got one more item, which is the next regulatory cycle. And correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, with these dates, but November 8th, we have a public hearing coming up where we will be discussing, so that public hearing is on items that were discussed at the October 5th workshop. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the 9th. The hearing's on the 9th. That's the planned date right
On the
now.
9th, November 9th. And then the next council meeting, possibly the 30th, is that correct?
We have the meetings generally on the first Monday We try to get regs in effect for the first of the year. That always makes that December real tight. So we're maybe asking you to consider moving that a week earlier. The Monday before is the 29th. I believe that might be Hanukkah, so maybe Tuesday the 30th?
30th, yeah. For the next council.
For the next council meeting, right, so hearing on the 9th, and then council.
All right, and I'm sure you'll notify us.
I'll take a poll, email you all, and see if that works. You don't have to decide anything this day.
Katie, did you have a comment?
I did, this was discussed at the last SAP, and I was told there wasn't going to be a November council meeting, but, and just to make sure that we can schedule.
This is the December council meeting a week earlier at the end of November.
Okay, so I just want to, if we can have a SAP for this, this week earlier meeting, that'd be great. That way, I think there's a couple of.
I think that's in the works. Anna is aware of that, yeah.
Any other discussion items under the regulation cycle that we should talk about?
I guess I would just comment that we, traditionally we'll have our workshop to work to either get things timed for a regulatory decision or solicit feedback from industry on proposals out there. We had that, I believe, last week it was, of which will then feed into this regulatory cycle that we're describing. So we will have to kind of get our ducks in a row to file those proposed reg changes, I believe, in 3 days.
Very quick.
Very quickly. So, council members or those that you work with speak to, they can still provide us comments on what we went to workshop with, and we can make amendments, or we can add those to the public notice.
Until
the 15th this week. So, things like commercial, summer flounder, black sea bass, things we discussed. The meeting materials, that should be on the website if you want to check it out. But, yeah, I would say any proposals, please send them our way.
great. So that said, we have no additional business on the agenda. Are there any other matters that should be brought forward at this time? Council? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
No, please, new business, new business?
Yeah. We did that at the beginning, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Do you have a quick comment?
Yeah, I was wondering what's going on with the Tuck proposal that you brought up last April. You were gonna plan for a workshop. What's taking place now? The workshop?
Is this a commercial proposal?
Yes.
So the workshop we just had did not cover commercial to talk. That will be, I believe, early January, most likely.
Workshop in January and that's generally the February hearing, March council cycle at the dog.
You okay, sir?
Yeah, now the proposal I put in, is that already been established as part of this workshop, or do I have to redo this again, because there's so much, disruption here with this virus and stuff, with getting things across the way it should be coming through. And I sent in the proposal,
We can bring that proposal back forth. We will reach out to you to confirm your stance in writing, and then we will bring it before workshop in January.
Do we have a date for that workshop?
Not yet.
So that's to be announced, the date, but it'll be in January. Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I think I did that. We had a motion, we had a second. All those in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Great. So adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.